In the lead up to D-Day, everything revolved around deception, preparation and keeping things a secret. It was crucial to the success of D-Day that the Germans didn't see their allies coming. For the D-Day landings to succeed, practice was crucial, but it was just as important to keep it from the Germans, so they wouldn't find out the Allies' plans. The search went underway for beaches and conditions which were like the target landings. Slapton Sands was selected due to the beach resembling the code-named Utah Beach. Before American military could get their practice underway, they would require about 3,000 local residents to be evacuated from their homes. The quiet seaside town became a hive of activity, as 30,000 US troops moved in and brought their landing crafts, ships and tanks with them. The practice, named Exercise Tiger, was set to mimic the whole D-Day operation, starting with loading men, tanks and equipment onto landing craft and following it all the way to the landings on the beaches. This was essentially a full-scale D-Day rehearsal. On the 22nd of April 1944, the exercise kicked off, and between the 22nd and the 25th, troops loaded into carriers. On the 26th of April, those carriers embarked on their journeys. The route was to start from Plymouth and take the course down to Slapton Sands to simulate the crossing of the English Channel. The morning of the 28th, the exercise kicked off, with HO at the landing time set for 7:30 that morning. Before the landings, they decided to include live firing to mimic what the US troops might feel in Normandy. HMS Hawkins was set to shell the beach between 6:30 and 7:30, just before the troops would land on Slapton Sands. Challenges and delays with the landing ships that morning led Admiral Don P. Moon, the commanding officer, to decide to postpone the exercise by an hour. This change was effectively communicated to HMS Hawkins and the new firing time was rescheduled to 7:30 to 8:30. However, and despite efforts, some of the landing craft still headed to the beaches at the original time of 7:30, where they were met with a storm of shells from HMS Hawkins. It's easy to imagine how these young and relatively inexperienced soldiers reacted to these shells raining upon them. But despite this, they pressed on, believing it was all still part of the exercise. At first, the firing wasn't a major problem, with the firing lines clearly marked out with white tape and the soldiers funneled in between them. During the exercise briefing, the soldiers were told to return fire to simulated enemy positions. Believing their guns were filled with blanks, they fired away. Little did they know, their guns were actually loaded with live ammunition. The troops had already clustered together to avoid the certain death zones either side of them, but this tight grouping led to many friendly fire incidents. The chaos that unfolded meant that a lot of soldiers strayed into HMS Hawkins' firing zone, where they were met with the Navy's heavy artillery. Despite the friendly fire incident, the operation went ahead as planned, with a second larger convoy of LSTs operating on the delayed timetable heading to the beachfront. The LSTs required protection. They were being escorted by both HMS Scimitar and HMS Azalea. However, due to a collision between HMS Scimitar and one of the LSTs, the former had to return to Plymouth for repairs, leaving the convoy with only the smaller HMS Azalea for protection. Incredibly, communication broke down once again, with HMS Azalea operating on a different radio frequency to the LSTs. Azalea received a warning of German E-boats that were spotted earlier that morning, whereas the LSTs remained completely unaware. HMS Azalea led the convoy of slow-moving LSTs, opting for a straight line route instead of the safer zigzag pattern. This proved fatal when the German E-boat spotted the LSTs with just one ship for protection. The German E-boat crews could hardly believe their luck. Meanwhile, the troops aboard the LSTs were completely exposed. Suddenly and without warning, the E-boats launched torpedoes at the LSTs. Some were sunk instantly, while others were set ablaze, with soldiers scrambling to get off, burdened by their D-Day preparation gear. In total, approximately 750 men died in the exercise, with a lot of them drowning. Tragically, some of these deaths could have been prevented if the men were properly shown how to put on their life belts, with some of them putting them on around their waist. As they jumped into the water, they were flipped and hurled upside down due to the weight of the gear in their backpacks. Even for those who donned their life belts on correctly, they'd have to withstand the icy cold water, leading to many deaths from hypothermia. The operation was quickly classified as top secret, not only to prevent the Germans from finding out about the practices, but also to prevent the troops from finding out about the devastation that was caused, which could severely dampen their morale. With preparations and practices in full swing, the Allies now faced the critical challenge of drawing German attention away from the actual landing locations. A major part of the deception was to make the Germans believe that the Allied army was much bigger than it actually was. Operation Fortitude South went underway, an operation to deceive the Germans into thinking their target was Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. One of the more unique ways of achieving this was to create fake tanks and fake aircraft. Whenever a real tank was moved from their holding areas, they were swiftly replaced by inflatable doubles. This would lead any German reconnaissance aircraft to report back that the tank was still there. The base for Fortitude South was here in Dover, with the fake leaving point for the fictitious invasion of Calais being Dover. A crucial part of this was that Dover and the area surrounding it must look like preparation was ahead. Of course, the Allies couldn't leave real LSTs floating in the estuaries of the southeast, so they built fake ones. Dummy landing craft were made from an assortment of different things: scaffolding tubes, wood, canvas and empty barrels. They were assembled and then deployed in harbours and rivers around the southeast, and from above they looked like a huge invasion force readying to invade Pas-de-Calais. Operation Fortitude South successfully deterred German troops away from Normandy. Even as late as August 1944, 2 months after the Normandy invasion, German forces were still anticipating an invasion force coming to them to Calais. These diversionary operations kept the Germans guessing. If they didn't know where the invasion was coming from, they couldn't prepare their defences against it.